What was it that... Because you had something you wanted to discuss as well.
I don't remember. I had written those down.
Yeah, I mean, I know I saw on the calendar thing the stuff that I had mentioned, but I don't think I saw, because you had mentioned something too.
What did I say on the calendar thing?
Well, that's where I was talking about, like, kind of being, like, not being content with my current style, or wanting to change it, wanting to switch it up, and and then I mentioned briefly, like, thinking about broad appeal and does it matter.
Welcome back to the DL on Arts, friends, here on the Arts Department. We're here, Daniel and I.
Hello.
I am Autumn Rain Turkel, and
I'm Daniel Landerman.
We are illustrators, sketch artists, and creative directors.
I guess.
Yeah. It's now that it's
congratulations.
Official. Oh, so thank you, and congratulations to you, sir. Big changes at work. We work for an advertising agency in Hollywood, California, and things are moving along with that place. It's growing rapidly, so we are in a position where we have to help steer the illustration side. And then in our personal time, we do tons of different styles of art.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
We do art at work, and then to unwind from work, we do art.
Wait, you mean other people don't do that? That's not common? I thought that mechanics went home and worked on their cars in the evening.
Yeah, I think bankers just go home and punch away on calculators all night. Just like super relaxing to them.
So you can find on my channel, you can find a lot of videos about my thoughts on art, tips on art, stuff like that. You can catch my live stream 3 nights a week on YouTube and Twitch. Something like that. And this podcast is a sometimes occasional, when we have the time and the bandwidth, meandering conversation around art, around the things that we've been thinking about in our personal journey in art, and hopefully we can impart to you some of what we've learned or some of the things that we're going through, as well as show you that even when you have a career in art, when you have achieved something and moved in a direction, you're going to continue to evolve that journey. And I think that's what today's conversation is going to center around. Personal style, how that relates to your work, how that relates to everything else in your life. Right?
Yeah, and I think personal style and how that evolves over time. Right?
Yeah.
Because it changes. As we grow, as our aesthetics change, we all get tired of looking at the same thing over and over, and that includes our own art, and we have to be able to change that up, which then of course has rippling effects in the rest of what we do. So
so here we go, folks.
All the things.
Yeah. Okay. So I had something that I wanted to talk about on this podcast. I do not now, because I forgot to take my notes. So lesson number 1, friends, take notes, because
Write that down.
Because life is going to get in the way, and you will forget what you wanted to talk about on these sorts of things.
Yeah.
And on top of that, these are conversations that you and I have on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
On a Discord chat, any time that we get an opportunity, we start talking about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's why the podcast came about, really, was because we thought, well, maybe some people would like to have kind of a look into these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if you have things that you're thinking about, you should probably write them down.
Yes.
Because it helps to write it, to solidify it in your mind. And I got busy with a deadline and spaced on my notes. Daniel did not, because Daniel is a professional. I am...
Actually, you wrote my notes down. I had to try and remember, but I remembered you put those notes in the calendar, so I looked back. I was like, okay, I remember. That's what I was.
So does that make me like your personal assistant or something?
No,
what the hell just happened here?
you did that on your own.
Wow, that's weird.
I assumed I was going to remember, and I'm glad you wrote them down.
I'm glad I wrote your notes down too, because it gives us a starting point to be like, hey, these are the things that we think about. And because this was probably last week that we started kind of kicking around, maybe we have the time to do this.
Yeah. I want to say it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, so it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, which in terms of advertising deadlines is
an
eons.
eternity.
Yeah.
Man. I'm sure we've gone through 6 or 7 deadlines between then and now.
Yes, there was quite a bit going on. I mean, just even 2 days ago, I was like...
Yeah.
So, on to, I guess, the meat and potatoes of this whole conversation.
Yes.
So, you want to discuss...
It's really like... I mean, we can start, I guess... talking about sort of, I don't want to say changing my style per se, because I feel like this far into it, there's a certain amount of kind of handwriting that's ingrained in my marks, and to a degree, but it's still like, for me, I think for a while, I want to say the last couple years, I've felt like there were some things that were kind of lacking in what I was doing. Or at least, I don't know if it was a combination of just like getting tired of seeing kind of the same things, coming from my hands all the time, and, wanting to grow, or if it's just that my aesthetics and awareness have grown, and so I've been seeing kind of the things that I need to sort of elevate and level up on, but sort of like, I'm not sure how large of a shift I'm looking for, but I am kind of looking for an overall sea change to my work, which really, I mean, comes down to how I treat shape design, how I treat lighting design, whether that's the value grouping I choose, or even the lighting scenarios I choose, as well as color palette design, shifting how I use color, and then as well as a bit of mark making and paint handling if we're talking traditional, which of course then echoes out into my digital work.
I don't find mark making and paint handling to be necessarily strictly traditional,
right?
So,
right,
because
totally.
At this point,
paint handling a little bit, simply in that if you're doing oils, you're dealing with a 3-dimensional surface, right? In terms of how heavy you put the paint on is visually, striking. But
respectfully disagree, because I feel like
it does
right
go
now
into
with
digital.
With digital, there's a like I can, and I've been looking at this recently. You can see it on some of the stream stuff, where I was really looking, and I guess looking to switch up my style a little bit and add some more things to my quiver, right?
Yeah.
And so I was doing real soft, kind of as if I was using a dry brush in oil paint quite a bit, right? So I was that, and that there's not a whole lot of paint handling in that, but there's an approach that implies paint handling.
Yeah.
Right. And then
Absolutely.
so then recently I was like, okay, now I kind of have a hold on that, but I don't want to get locked into doing just this soft stuff. So with the most recent painting that I'm doing on stream, the digital one, I'm strictly doing 100% opacity.
Right.
And it behaves more like acrylic, and there is paint handling in that, because there's thick and thin, but it's all, butted up against one another kind of thing. And then maybe I'll come back and adjust some of those lines, or adjust some of those shapes with softer edges using more paint handling. So that's...
the paint handling, it definitely affects like how we use digital, right? Because I think for us being artists that love to use traditional paint, when we're painting digitally, we're kind of pretending it's traditional in our heads while we're, so when we're doing low opacity, we're probably thinking glazing, right? Yeah. And then when we're doing full opacity, we're imagining the brush is caked with paint.
Yeah.
It's like, so loaded with paint, I think, is the digital term, right?
Yeah. Paint load. Share the load. I can't think about that now without seeing the whole Frodo thing, foaming at the mouth. Ugh. You've ruined me for that. I think I was watching that again recently, and that scene came up, and I was like, God damn it, Daniel. Gross. So I mean, we do. I do think that I think that way when I'm doing digital work. I'm kind of,
even though we're aware of all the digital tricks that we can do, and we use those tools and stuff, but I think when we're actually painting, we kind of are imagining it's a real paintbrush.
I mean, even when I'm working right down to sketching or inking digitally, I'm actually thinking about the tool that I would use if I was doing traditional. Which is why pencils can be so frustrating.
Oh my God,
because there is
because you know what you would do with a real pencil and you can't do it. Procreate does a pretty good job because you can put the Apple Pencil on its side. It does a pretty good job. It's not quite there because it's not actually pencil on paper.
I still have a pretty good job close. Still not there. I still,
especially after however many thousands of hours drawing with a real pencil. It's just like.
I wonder, and this is a question for you out there in arts department land. How do you feel about digital versus analog drawing, like with, let's say, using a pencil versus using Procreate? How does that feel to you? Let us know down below.
Or a pen.
Or how does inking feel to you?
Drawing utensil.
I will say that personally, Procreate, the inking in Procreate is nice. I feel like inking in general in digital, really well done. Like there's, because it's just so opaque. Right. It's kind of I want to say the medium just really shines at that point. I feel like inking and penciling are different when it comes to digital.
Very, very different. I think because a pencil is so versatile, and it's interesting because it's usually the first thing that we pick up as kids is a pencil to draw with, usually,
I'm crayons.
or a marker, or,
Apparently I started with crayons.
or your mom's lipstick or something. And so I think a lot of people will think of a pencil as being simpler or more limited than it really is, because most people don't pick up a pencil and draw with the side of it. Right. Most of the time they're picking up a pencil and just drawing with the tip, and it limits what you can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't realize how versatile it is, how much like a brush it can be if you use the side of it as well as the tip for details and all that stuff.
I was actually thinking that when I was watching, because you've been I don't want to say re-investigating some traditional stuff, but you've been trying to sharpen that pencil.
Yeah.
Stupid. But okay, so back to what I was saying. What I was thinking was that I was watching you on Instagram doing a pencil illustration, and really looking at the fact that you don't think of pencils as a linear element.
Yeah,
or a linear medium.
Yeah.
It's your approach is more it's a painting thing.
Yeah.
I watched you work, and there's a little bit of some structure in there with where you do some line, and then you're pretty much on the side of the pencil, toning in things at different levels of I want to say opacity, because really when you're working with a pencil, like on the side, especially if you push hard, you get a darker tone.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that was actually the main thing that kind of made me fall in love with that technique of using Prismacolor on acetate or tracing paper, was that I could treat it like a painting. Yeah. I could think tonally and think in the same way, in the same kind of mark making fashion as I might with a paintbrush.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For those that are interested, you can see many examples of that on his Instagram, on his YouTube. They're all over the place. So go and check them out.
Google Daniel Landerman and stuff will pop up. Instagram, I don't know if my Instagram is the first one that pops up or not, but it might be.
The pencil thing, and now that we've meandered a bit, the pencil thing is when you're talking about advancing your style, changing your style up and that sort of thing, is this an across the board thing? Or, because I know that when I'm doing personal style, I have personal styles in a lot of styles.
Genres,
yeah.
Yeah, because so that's where I definitely like to draw the distinction, because it is a term, style is a term that's thrown out in several applications, right? And to apply to several different things, and it makes it hard to discuss, like, are we talking about, stylized versus realism? Are we talking about like animation style versus painting style? So I like to think of style as that's more kind of what I mentioned before, that underlying handwriting in whatever it is we do. And it doesn't matter. Like if I do something way more cartoony, there is still an underlying handwriting to it that people will still recognize it as me.
Right.
Right. Versus what I would say would be more genre, if we're talking cartoony versus realism, or painting versus drawing, which would be more medium based, not genre, but so I feel like if you're going for a kind of sea change in your work, like the way that I'm approaching it is more the way that I'm seeing everything, right? So the details that I'm choosing to latch onto, the changes that I'm choosing to make, that in the editing process. If I'm say, painting off of a photo, what are the edits that I'm choosing to make in the painting, right? Because I'm not going for like a one-to-one reproduction of the photo.
Right, you're not doing portraits.
Right.
You're
I
doing,
mean, it is portraits, but it's not photorealism.
Right.
I want it to be painterly,
Right.
right? And so that might involve, this cast shadow, the information is there, but it would look a little better if I tweak the edge of it, or if I extend it a little bit more,
right.
From a design standpoint. Right?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, we just want to have strongly designed images. So that's where I think that kind of overall shift in how I'm seeing things, which will change the way that I approach, in this case, a painting, because I'm a little more focused on like oil painting, in my personal work. But I think there's no way for that not to have rippling effects into everything else I do.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not necessarily gonna focus on like, I want to change it in this medium, and this medium, and this medium. I'm gonna focus on a medium, but in order to really make that shift, it has to get very kind of ingrained and naturalized
Sure.
into what I do. So it's just gonna change everything realistically.
Yeah. Well, I feel like some of that stuff just kind of happens by osmosis.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So there's something that happens in our day job where we're very narrative driven to begin with, right? When we started as fantasy illustrators, people that latched onto the storytelling, the stories, the characters, and that sort of thing. Our initial inclination was to be very narrative driven.
Yeah.
Right. Was to find caught moments and
Yeah.
quiet moments or big epic moments
Yeah.
of battles and stuff, but
Yeah.
it was still a narrative piece.
Yeah.
Where there was a story going on, even if it was a battle scene, it
was like a literal scene.
It
from
was a scene.
The story.
It was a caught moment.
Yeah.
And over the years of being in the positions that we're in, I've found that just organically I have become more and more design oriented in the drawings and paintings that I'm doing. So much so now that when I go to do the narrative things, I'm like, wait a minute, that's not, it's not, it just like,
it's funny because it's still a struggle for me to not do narrative. Which, it's hard for me when we do get the chance to concept on something. It's hard for me not to just go for a narrative scene and just think design concept.
Just think design, think epic, think sell.
Right.
And those are the things that now are so like in my head that when I'm doing,
what's the 3-second read?
Yeah. When I'm doing the stuff for the stream or anything like that, I'm like, what is this shape? How does it read? How are people going to respond to it? And I look for those before I look for any narrative or anything. Yeah. So like the last successful narrative piece that I feel like I did was probably the dragon.
Yeah, that's the one that pops into mind.
On the ridge line, right?
Yeah, with the cobalts.
Cobalts, yeah. And that was a while ago. Yeah. I mean, because I did that spider. What Sarah, looking at you, calls a drider. It's not a drider. What Sarah calls a drider. I did that too, but there's no narrative to that at all. It's really just a character presentation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just her on some rocks, which that goes more towards that like epic, quick read, interesting character, boom, you're done.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, I don't feel like my work has suffered at all because of that growth. I feel like that is something that brought something to my personal work from my day job organically that I can appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, it's just going to strengthen the design of the image, right? To go for that iconic read, is really, like, it's all about just really strong design. So, and that's a good thing, and I think something that can be brought to the narrative stuff. You just kind of, I feel like the order just kind of gets flipped, right? When we're going for that iconic read for work, it's composition first, right? Composition second, maybe some narrative, but the narrative doesn't matter in a lot of cases. Not if we're trying to sell, films or TV shows or video games. We'll go a little more narrative sometimes with their key art, but even then, it's not like a book cover. It's not like a interior illustration, for D&D or something like that. Monster manual not included, because that's all just characters. But
I feel like recently, maybe I'm wrong, but recently there's been kind of a push, and I think this might be COVID related. The push towards using more unit, more kind of caught moment from the film. Unit is photography taken by a photographer on site during the filming to capture images for marketing purposes primarily, as well as images that the filmmakers can look back on and reminisce. But frequently you'll notice shots from the film as movie posters, and that's unit photography is what the marketers tap into to make those happen. And I don't necessarily think that there is a narrative in there. Right, because all it is a snapshot in time. So
I think when they want that, when they go for the for that caught moment from the film or the show, it's mostly them wanting to just avoid the posed photo shoot vibe, right? Because the other aspect, so there's the unit photography, and then there's the special shoot, right, where they actually have the actor on like a seamless, actor or actors, sometimes the entire cast one by one on a seamless, taking different poses that might be used in the marketing campaign. But you can't avoid those feeling posed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, stand in front of a camera.
Even if they have them on a treadmill and they're walking or running or whatever, they always think they want them running, but they never do. Because it's just, it's hard. End up using a different head on a running body. So I think it's just when they want something that feels a little more immersive and natural is when they want to use that caught moment photography.
But
which I understand.
I don't really feel like there's narrative in it at all. It's not really. No, it's not a narrative driven push. It's just. It's just hey, let's feel more genuine.
The reality is, like, for key art, people aren't sitting with it long enough for narrative to really be a factor. Right? Because half the time you're talking about a billboard or a bus shelter and they're driving by it anywhere from 30 to 90 miles an hour and they see it for a few seconds, so you can't tell a story.
Which is why you go epic, you go composition, you go quick read.
So, I understand why they wouldn't want something to be too narrative with that. I love storytelling. I know you love storytelling, whether that's writing or showing stories, and there's just something about that I find a lot more immersive and allows the viewer to use their imagination, you know. And so, like, I like to create that stuff. It's hard for me, especially if I'm doing traditional, to want to go, say, the more conceptual route, something you might find in a gallery, you know, because you're not really going to find illustration, like straight up illustration in the gallery.
Right.
What happened? Well, we talked overly long. We didn't actually get to the subject. So we're going to cut it here. We're going to come back at the next episode, and I promise you we'll get to the discussion that we promised at the beginning. Stay tuned, ring the bell, like, subscribe, all the things, and come on back for more discussion. That's it from the arts department. Keep drawing. We'll see you next time.